Nice. All right. Well, welcome to Leanplum. My name is Clara. I'm the talent ambassador. We're really excited to have you all here. And I just wanted to give you guys a little intro into Leanplum in case you haven't heard of us. All right, so Leanplum is a mobile marketing automation platform. We're growing really quickly. We recently got our latest round of funding, so up to $98 million. We have 250 employees across 6 global offices. And just to give you an idea of some numbers, we have 25 billion incoming events per day, 343 million monthly active users, and over 1.5 billion outgoing pushes per day. One thing is we're really proud of our culture here at Leanplum. We were recently made a Fortune's best company on that coveted list, as well as one of the best companies on Entrepreneur's list in 2017. And we just acquired Connecto, which is an AI conversational marketing platform. So if you're wondering what Leanplum really does, essentially we take live data from client apps and data systems and dynamically personalize the experience of the app for better user engagement. But the reason, we're really excited, we're also are trusted by mobile leaders. So like Tinder, TED, Tesco, Zynga, Papa John's. A lot of big global brands trust and love Leanplum, and we love them too. But, the real reason we're all here today is because we're very passionate about increasing the number of women in tech, because as we all know, that could be much better, and we're awesome. So we should be in more places. So some of our initiatives in the coming year, we're sponsoring the 2018 Grace Hopper Conference down in Houston. If anyone's there in September, feel free to come by to our booth and say hi. We have a national sponsorship with Women Who Code. And we also host a variety of very female-forward meetups like this one, such as our Women Breaking Through meetup, which brings in females in tech who have gotten to a very far place in their career, and sort of they talk through challenges and how they've overcome them as being a woman in tech. And Girls Who Code, and also partnerships like this one. So we're really excited you're all here, and I hope you all got enough pizza, and don't forget there's swag and also wine in the back and non-alcoholic drinks in the fridges if that's your jam. So I think we are ready. Also, we're hiring. All right. I think we are ready for Amy.
All right. Hi, everyone. I hope you all, as she just said, got a lot of pizza, started looking at their careers page, started looking at other people's careers pages. Actually, should I get closer to the mic? Over here? Here? All right. Today I'm going to talk to you all about Big Red Bun, which is the Stripe's incident management tool. I don't know why I paused. I think I was waiting for questions. I feel like I'm still in classroom mode. There's no questions yet, Amy. All right. So I'm going to move this closer to, all right. What is Stripe? I found out from our PR team that Stripe builds economic infrastructure for the internet. What that really means is that Stripe helps people build businesses on the internet. We're trying to solve pretty much any problem that people have. One of the first problems we started tackling was accepting payments online. Some of our customers include Lyft. I should have more on my mind. I'm gonna if I think of more, I'll come back to it. But Lyft is definitely a customer. They're a great one. I think Stripe is in a really unique position where security and reliability, to a very extreme degree, are the most important things that we can offer to people. We hope that we will never have a PCI, PII incident, and we aim to be at least 5 nines of reliability, which is a very high bar. One thing that shocked me was that I was talking to another engineer, and he said that he sweats every single 500 error that we get. And at my old job, honestly, if there was a undercurrent of 500s, I'd be like, oh, that looks fine. It's not spiking. That's okay. No, every single 500 matters. So that's why incident management matters so much to us. We hope to never have. Did it get louder? Yes. Nice. That's awesome. That's incident management in action. I was like, maybe if I get away from it, it will stop taking in noise from me existing. All right, thank you. And so while we want incidents to be as rare as possible, we do want to try to handle those incidents as quickly and as rigorously as possible. I forgot to mention who I am. My name is Amy Nguyen, and I am an engineer on the observability team. My Twitter handle is on the left side, and there's my homepage. For reasons that will become relevant very soon, that's my cat, Pumpkin. I've had him for most of my life. He's really cute, and we'll talk about him later. So how do you declare an incident? I want you all to think about what you do when there's an incident at your company. Maybe you just go to PagerDuty, you page the team that matters. There might be alerts going off, or you might have to manually call someone. You might want to send an email to the whole company and hope that everyone responds to their email and just starts reacting to and remediating. You might go into Slack and use @channel, @here, like everyone get over here, I need to deal with this. You might just start screaming. Just sit at your desk and go, ah, 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 until someone comes and gets you. You might go and find a war room, like what we call you get in a conference room, you declare it a physical war room. You might just kick everyone out of it. That's fine. All of this is fine. But even if you get through all of this, there's so much more that you have to think about. There's so many little things. You might have to remember to update your Twitter page. Where are the instructions? Who has the password? Who's actually allowed to log on to Twitter? You might have to go to your status page, like status.stripe.com. There might be an RSS feed. You might be sending out emails to individual users. You might have to talk to all of the stakeholders who would care in a time-sensitive manner, like communications for all of the stuff from before. You might have to talk to your lawyers in case there's any sort of contractual SLA-related violations. You might have to talk to the security team, account managers for managing all those individual relationships. There's so many things. You gotta send out emails again. You gotta create a JIRA ticket because you gotta track the incident and make sure that all of the post-incident remediation tickets have been filed. You gotta document the incident timeline because people like all of those metrics about mean time to detection, mean time to remediation, blah, blah, blah. You might have to also tell people where to go to help remediate. In Stripe's case, we do a lot of our coordination over Slack channel, or over a Slack channel, but if you have a video conference number, you might have to send out the phone number. That's so much. And so, those infomercials where you have the black and white image where someone is struggling with a very simple task and it just falls apart? That's what it was like back in the day. It was just I can't open my milk and everything's everywhere and I just wanted a cup. And so that's where you got the big red button. As a side note, it's really funny. One of my first questions when I joined Stripe was the name of our URL is actually incident reporting serve.stripe.com in our internal VPN. And I was like, incident reporting serve? Why don't we call it the IRS? And my coworker was very serious, we don't joke about the IRS. So it's gotta be the big red button. It cannot be the IRS. So the big red button, it should invoke this feeling of there's an incident, you just slam a button and instantly everything happens and you don't have to worry. So all of that stuff I listed before, it's now just a form. I lost my cat. Pumpkin's just somewhere and now we gotta find him. And so I hit the big red button. And first of all, I don't know if you can see it all the way at the top, but the incident name is a randomly generated 2-word phrase. This is because if you rely on people to, while they're panicking, come up with a name for their incident, they might just put swear words in there. They might just go, oh my God, the API is down, and maybe that incident name is already taken from the last time the API was down. So we do randomly generate a name that is work appropriate. And by work appropriate, I mean, we used to have this list of vegetables, and I was hoping someone would just start laughing. Thank you. Because we had to then delete the word eggplant from the incident list. So there's no eggplant anymore. But yeah, so now we have lavender banana. That's the unique ID for this incident. So there's always a way to refer to it without having to say that incident where Amy lost her cat, which is really long. I can write a description if I want. If I don't have time, I don't have to write it. I have to classify the severity. In this case, for Stripe, a level 1 incident would be something like if the API is down for more than 2 or 3 minutes, we definitely call it a level 1 incident. That's just for deciding how much to mobilize people. A level 2 can be of a similar category, but maybe not all of our users are affected. And a level 3, we actually do use this incident response process for non-user facing incidents. For example, let's say our internal instance of like GitHub or some other internal tool is down. We consider that a developer productivity incident, and we go through the whole same response process to mitigate. But we'd call that a level 3 because it's okay, you can just call it an early day if GitHub's down. I've definitely failed on work before because things were down. So user-facing, somewhat self-explanatory. When you choose affected some or all users, it will automatically page the communications team so that they can go and start doing that proactive outreach. Yes. And shout out to Connie Lin, who will be speaking later on tonight. We'll be talking about what an incident commander is later on, but if you need one, we'll page you one. We have a rotation staffed for getting you an incident commander. We call it an incident PM, and I don't know why. And you can page people that you want to page. For example, I want to tell the entire observability team, or not the on-call person for the observability team, if I need help finding my cat. All right. And also, we try to keep the form as short as possible. It is the big red button. It's not the big, bureaucracy button. You want to move as fast as possible. And so here's the Slack channel that will get generated. The prefix at the front of the channel, we've prefixed everything with IR for incident remediation. I, of course, created this in our test QA environment because I didn't want to alarm everyone just because I was making slides. So that's the QA incident remediation, lavender banana. And so you can see a couple of key pieces of information that are created when this incident starts. You get your JIRA ticket, so in case you want to make comments for after the incident. You know who is the PM. In this case, I am the PM because I started the incident, didn't need anyone else. I have a Google Doc in case I need to take notes. Maybe I need to keep the timeline in there or just keep track of what's happening. For example, in a real incident, you might have a bunch of people restarting machines. You might have other people trying to roll back or deploy again or something like that. And so you want to keep all of that documentation somewhere so that people aren't stepping on each other. And let's pretend like I found my cat. When you close out the incident, you can include a really quick resolution, so just tell everyone what happened, and you can close out the channel. And here's another channel that we have for just logging all of the incidents in case you wanted to just keep track of what's going on in the company. You can see it at like an hour before the incident was closed. I opened it. Pumpkin is roaming the streets of San Francisco. And then we got the resolution. So that's the big red button. It's the solution. Now I can pour my milk, and nothing is wrong. So, yeah, I really love this GIF. I think about it like every time I use the big red button because, it's kind of like, what was my life like before I could just slam a button and automatically get an incident? Like, we really were just going through a checklist and like manually creating all of those things. So in terms of the considerations that we had when we were building it, we wanted to make sure that in the case of if there is an incident going on, it's very likely that something will be broken. Like maybe if the VPN is down, the internet is flaky, or if there's an AWS outage, any of those kinds of things, you have to expect that Google Docs, Slack, Jira, PagerDuty, any of these other APIs, like maybe you use like Mailgun, if any of those are broken, then it's very likely that the big red button will also be failing. And so we wanted to give very clear instructions for how to do every single task and make it possible for people to keep moving forward even when the big red button is not fully functional. Surprisingly, the big red button is just like pretty much usually or almost all the time functional. It does a very small set of tasks, and we try to make it as reliable as possible. We, of course, as I mentioned, try to make it as quick as possible. We don't want to slow down the reporter with a bunch of questions. And there are a ton of questions that we would like to be able to ask. For example, like, is this incident a deploy breaking incident? Do we need to stop people from deploying further? Do we need to lock down development? Or like, what if it's a developer productivity incident? What if it's, I don't know, a physical security incident? There are so many different types of incidents, but we can't even ask those kinds of questions because we want people to move as fast as possible. We don't want to make them have decision paralysis. And so we are pretty strict. I don't think we have added a question to that form in maybe like 6 months. And it's really hard to add. We refuse to add more questions, or we try very hard not to. We try to over-communicate as much as possible. We don't leave it up to the reporter to decide whether or not they want to page the communications team. The communications team will always get paged if the incident is severe enough, meaning if it affects any amount of users, if it is a level 2 or higher incident. The good thing about this is that we are big enough that we have a rotation in 3 time zones, and so usually no one is actually getting woken up for this. And so we usually tell people, like, just get them, and if you tell them that they're not needed, they'll leave and it'll be fine. We try to do everything that could possibly be done that is not a part of the human remediation process. So I will say our development team is usually watching every single incident to figure out where all of the redundancy or any time it's being wasted is, where it is. But we're not done. The Big Red Button, we've been using it for about almost 1 year now, and it's completely changed our incident response process, but there's so much more we want to develop. We want to talk about categorizing incidents, which I covered earlier. We're hoping that we can add a way for people to start saying whether or not they need to lock deploys, whether or not they need to contact our legal team, and have it all done automatically. We want to make sure that people are actually doing all the things that they need to be doing. For example, right now we can't detect if someone remembered to update the Twitter page. In a wild situation where Stripe is down for like 20 minutes, if the Twitter account is not updated or the status page is not updated, that's unacceptable to our users. We want to make the post-incident review process as easy as possible. Right now, if someone has an idea for something that they want to be doing as a repair item, they just type it into the channel and hope that someone writes it down. We want to just automatically catch those kinds of comments and record them so that no one has to go and copy and paste. Same with the timeline. We want to automatically generate a timeline just based on timestamps. And we're also hoping to do some analysis in the next few months so we can see if say me, because I'm great, if I'm in every incident and I'm like remediating every single one and people are relying on me, how do we talk about getting those services to have more expertise so that I'm not the only one on call, for example. And so because of the Big Red Button, everything was fine. Thank you. Questions?
Yeah. Does anyone have questions?
This is the cutest picture, huh? All right.
1, 2, 3.
If it's about open source, we're not open sourcing in the next 6 months. So.
Okay. These incidents are mainly infra related, right? Because I'm from security, and when you say incident, it triggers a security, perspective in me. So what about when you say next, when you look at the GDPR, it says you need to have a breach notification when you have an incident at a particular level. So do you plan to do that as well in the future? Say when you have a security incident, you classify it in that way, and then it gives a notification to, say, the government or something like that?
Yeah, so it sounds like there's kind of 2 things where it's what are we doing in the GDPR world where there's a ton of reporting that needs to happen? Mm-hmm. In that case, so it's I think ideally we'd have a way for people to automatically figure out if something is relevant to GDPR, and then they'd automatically go and get our lawyers. We are working out a way to make it really easy for people to decide, does this affect Europe, and does it affect payments in Europe at a certain degree? And that's when we actually do have to care about GDPR. Right now, I will say that our legal team, they do subscribe to the emails that get sent out by the Big Red Button. They just read through all the summaries and start acting from there, and they'll hop in the channel and usually say, does this meet the criteria that we've been talking about? We do want a way to start automatically filing. On the security piece, there's other kinds of incidents where maybe you don't want the entire company to be aware of something I don't know. I'm making up stuff because honestly, Start doesn't have a ton of incidents, so I'm kind of making up magical things that I wish the Big Red Button could handle. Let's say someone leaks all of their passwords, or someone starts leaking social security numbers. Usually the security team right now will not go through the Big Red Button because it's a public Slack channel. Right now, as in next week, we're going to release a thing where it'll create a private Slack channel so that the security team can use all of the magic flow without compromising on security.
Okay, thank you.
I saw a question back there too. Or
So you talked about this a little bit, but I'm curious about how the sort of idea for this came about and how you were able to get buy-in from different people internally to go build this.
I think, so this project started right when I started at Stripe, which was last year. I think there was just a lot of pain around the whole process of like, you pull out the hack pad, which is like another form of like kind of Google Doc. You pull out the document, it has a giant checklist of like, did you contact these people? Did you make a channel? Did you do all this stuff? And people were just so frustrated with that. They're like, that we had buy-in just because the old incident process was so terrible. The other thing I will mention is that, you know, when you think about like what the observability team does, you know, we're usually handling metrics, logs, data, and like stack traces. There's not really anything in that kind of charter that suggests that we should own incident response. I think it was just like we felt there was a need and it was like vaguely related enough that we could like say, we're doing this, it's important to us.
Thanks.
How do you actually press the big red button?
Oh, it's, so I don't know if you could tell, but this form is very Bootstrap-like because it's based off of Bootstrap, but there is a button on the bottom right corner. You just click submit and everything will happen.
So you just have to bookmark that URL?
Oh, yes, yeah. We use Go links. You just say go/BRB. You can type like go/incident. I think we just came up with every permutation that someone would say if they were panicking. No, don't, not go/IRS. I think that leads somewhere else.
So do you have training on this process that teaches people how to use it and so on? Like what's that like?
Yes, we have 2 trainings. One is for becoming an incident reporter responder, and another training on how to become an incident PM or incident commander. The first training, you know, we offer it, we automatically schedule new engineers for it 3 months after they've started. Mainly because, you know, the orientation process, you're already jammed with like information about what Stripe is. And so we wait 3 months and then we start jamming in more information. During that process, everyone gets to create their own test incident. So you get some pretty wild names, like I lost my cat. What else do we tell people? I think we usually just tell them like how to get people that they need, like how to page people. We have a Slack command. It's an open source tool called PagerBot. You can just type PagerBot get observability and it'll work. And we just tell them kind of like what we expect, what we consider an incident. On the incident PM side, I'll leave that to Connie Nguyen, but you know, more coordination and making sure that the right decisions are being made. Are we out of time? Are there more questions?
I think we're at time. So
Cool. All right, thanks everyone. There you go.
So I've been working at a small startup on the on-call team for 3 years now, and there are 3 challenges that I've seen. So we're a small team. There's only 4 of us who take our on-call rotation for the entire company. The engineering department's about 10 and the company's 18. And it was for 2 years, it was only 2 of us. And we're responsible for a large number of services. So our on-call team isn't just our on-call team. Our on-call team is all of the full stack engineers at the company. So not only are we handling all of the on-call rotations for everything, but we're also building features in the website, the API, infrastructure, and testing. And the first 2 points conspire to mean that we have little bandwidth for doing things like writing a perfect PagerDuty run book or always performing audits of our infrastructure. So in a very practical startup move, we came up with this simulated outage, a disaster recovery exercise, to be a tool to help our on-call team. So in my talk, I'm going to tell you like what a disaster recovery exercise is, how it can help you diagnose pain points in your infrastructure, and my favorite, how it can be a team learning exercise. The disaster recovery exercise is the most useful for your team when it's as realistic as possible. So you want your engineers to be digging through your production code base, trying to find and maybe not finding the production tools that they should be using.
It really helps if there's a defined objective. So oftentimes recovery exercises can go into kind of a, well, I guess we would spin up a server here. So I'll give you an example of our first disaster recovery exercise where we had a very clearly defined objective. So we operated in a sterilized environment. We wanted to not touch production resources because you don't really want to provoke incidents that are worse than the ones that you're trying to train for. So our primary region is US West 2. We operated in US East 1, and we had a very clear objective. You're supposed to spin up the API in US East 1. Don't look at any resources in the first production region, and you should be able to hit doctor-api.sigopt.com and service some API requests. And we chose a time box of 4 hours from an engineering OKR. We had an OKR around the amount of time that we would estimate that our site could be down. And as a tip that we learned, it helps save you okay, so we didn't actually delete any production resources, thank goodness, but it helped me save a lot of heart attack to create AWS keys for everyone for our second disaster recovery exercise. And then deactivating their current keys to ensure that the people participating in the exercise are using the new keys. So the original reason we ran the disaster recovery exercise was as an infrastructure diagnostic tool, to be able to see what's working and what's not in our infrastructure's ability to be recovered. So to find problems, that meant that we really needed to lead an honest recap meeting. This is where we're gonna get most of the information about what we should be working on. It's incredibly important that people feel comfortable saying what they need to say in this meeting. It's not about whether or not you could find the tool because you're a good engineer or not. It's about whether or not the tool was easy to find. Tools can be hidden someplace far away. There are things that are non-obvious. And so these are some of the questions that we'll go over in our recap meetings. And one of the big ones that comes up is the question of priority. How did we prioritize what we spun up? What we spun up first to hit our objective, because when we start spinning up our API from scratch, there are some parts that are superfluous if our only goal is to hit our API. And so, yeah, this is just an example of some of the questions that we use to help come up with new projects. And we came up with 2 months worth of new project, or like 4 months worth of new projects from our first disaster recovery exercise. It's things that you wouldn't even necessarily think about finding. You wouldn't think to look for, like, is our deploy script region agnostic, right? Our deploy script was relying on the AWS configurations for whatever your default region is. And so when we tried to deploy to servers in US East 1, well, it couldn't do it. Or things like we had a script that we had run hundreds of times to deploy our machines. So we thought this script was well tested to deploy to our machines. And it turns out when we are running off of a fresh Ubuntu AMI, there is no directory named SigOpt. But when you're running off of an old AMI, there is a directory named SigOpt. And the scripts depended on there being a directory called SigOpt. And so that's one of the things that we found when we were doing an exercise that was really practical, that was going through exactly the types of processes that you would go through as you were recovering the site. My favorite part of the disaster recovery exercise, though, is that it's a team bonding experience and a team learning experience. So I've been on both sides of the disaster recovery exercise now, both as a new team member and now as a tech lead who's planning the exercise. And it's very clear that this is an exercise that benefits the team that you can learn a lot from because you've got a safe learning environment. And to encourage this process, we set up these team dynamics where we give the people who have the most to learn, the newest team members, the chance to get the most hands-on experience. So it's a little daunting, but we ask that our newer team members are the ones to lead the recovery efforts. And because the exercise is planned by the team leads and the recap is led by the team leads, we'll actually sit back and just take notes during the exercise and only participate if absolutely necessary. I told our engineers last time to pretend like me and the co-founder were both on separate exotic tropical vacations. But to make this not as intimidating as it sounds, because I was certainly very intimidated by the prospect of having my manager sit there and take notes while I was trying to do my job, we clearly communicate to everyone that this is, again, not a test of the engineer's personal abilities. This is a test of the site's ability to be recovered. This is not about whether or not the engineer did a good job. This is purely a chance for them to learn about the site, or for them to learn about themselves, and for all of us to get to learn about our website, our API, and our infrastructure, and our tooling. And like I said, it's a safe learning environment. So engineers really benefit when they get to try out a lot of stuff in a safe, sterilized, very production-like environment. And some of our engineers have said that this helps them build a lot of confidence in their ability to solve problems on call. And that makes me incredibly proud. And for me, I've found that it helps me build trust in my teammates. So I know that I've got a great set of people who are handling our on-call rotation. And as a personal touch, I added an offsite when I had the chance to plan my disaster recovery exercise. So after sitting in a room for 4 hours trying to spin up the API, everyone certainly deserved some company-sponsored drinks and dinner and arcade games. So that was a really nice way to end the disaster recovery exercise, because it's really a unique problem-solving experience for your on-call team. So it's not just this diagnostic tool. You can actually extend it to be a fun problem-solving experience that's just as unique as something like an escape room or a class that you might all take together. So in conclusion, the disaster recovery exercise is a kind of simulated site outage that's supposed to help you learn about your infrastructure and help your engineers learn about themselves. You can use it as a diagnostic tool, but it also makes for a great offsite for your on-call team. So if you guys plan one for yourselves, please let me know how it goes. And if you want to join us for our next one, we're hiring, as is everyone. Thank you so much. That was pretty short, so we've got time for questions, if anyone has questions.
Yes. Questions? Oh, one. Okay.
So how often do you schedule these?
Oh yeah, these are biannual. So since we're really small, we're scheduling them around when new people join the on-call rotation. So we have our next engineer joining in August, and then when she's ready to be ramped up into on-call, we will throw her in. I'm very excited. She'll do great. Yeah, that's a good question. So we debated how, for our last disaster recovery exercise, the first one I took on, we debated how much we wanted to do an old exercise versus do a new exercise was the question. And the pros of doing, as you mentioned, the cons of doing an old exercise are that people are already going to know how to recover things. But the pros of doing the old exercise are that your engineers should know how to recover things, and you will be able to see if there have been any changes from your baseline. So if you have some old elements that you repeat every time, those should hopefully become second nature for your engineers, and you'll be able to see if anything changes in that baseline. Although we did want to add in some different tweaks for our next one. Although what had happened was, by the time we got to our second disaster recovery exercise, the on-call team had changed so much that not everyone remembered what had happened last time. So we will design something that's a little bit more unique for our next one, but we still anticipate that keeping some elements, like we'll probably use a fresh region every time and test like region portability, and test like spinning up machines from scratch and things like that as being useful. So the answer is it's a mix and weigh the pros and cons. If you're doing it with the same on-call team all the time, then it would be useful to rotate. But if you're rotating people, then you can keep similar activities.
Other questions? Oh.
One.
I might be repeating a question you already answered. It's like, so when you're doing the simulation, is the new person being like the lead of doing the simulation, so you're seeing for fresh eyes from their point of view? Like you might be missing something, or?
Yeah, so it's to give them the chance to have the most hands-on experience. We'll ask the new person to be the one who's driving. So you can imagine that you've gathered all of your engineers into one room and you've told them, hey, you're going to be here for 4 hours. This is your objective. So we ask that the newest person is the one who's coming up with all the ideas, sitting at the keyboard if there's only one computer, and helping to kind of strategize and parse out some of the work. And it's especially important that the older team members sit back to give them the chance to try out things.
At what point, I mean, I assume at some point people might get just totally stuck. Has that happened? Do you like decide that there's a point you step in and intervene, or you just let it keep going and see?
So we definitely let it keep going. That's what the time box is for. So that's a good question. That's exactly why we have the time box, because it is a realistic thing that could happen. We do want our on-call engineers to know how to solve it, and we think that they'll learn a lot by struggling through solving it, just not for 12 hours. So we give it 4 hours. Last time the objective was completed as we were leading the recap meeting. So as we were going into the recap meeting, they're like, we pinged the API, we did it, we got an API call through. So we haven't had the case where everyone's stuck for an hour, but I would hope that they would be able to try different avenues. Since our startup's pretty small, our infrastructure is like pretty open, and it's also worth noting that we're giving them like an incredibly wide latitude to try the most ridiculous things. Like if you don't want load balancers, don't have load balancers. Like it's a real crisis. You're trying to spin up everything from scratch, and so you've got this one objective at the end, but we don't say how you have to do it. So there's not like, you could get stuck, but hopefully you're not going to get stuck for an hour on spinning up a load balancer. You're going to think, oh, I can try something different. But if it did happen, that's a great chance to go over it in the recap meeting, to say, hey, you got stuck, like what happened.
Hi, I was wondering, do the results of this event impact the training you give to your new employees?
So since we only have 4 people on the on-call team, training's pretty individual. Maybe we should build this into the training that we give our on-call engineers. That's a great idea. It hasn't impacted it so far, but I think I will take that suggestion.
Well, no more questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, cool, there's a clicker. Oh, I'm very excited. Yes. Hi, my name's Connie Lynn Villani, and I'm the Director of Incident Management at Fastly. Fastly is an edge cloud computing platform, which means basically we run our own CDN. We were originally just a CDN, but now we do a lot of computing actually at the edge. I am an engineer by trade, and I think it's really unique that Fastly specifically has a whole division of incident management. It's always been the most fun part of my job is incident prevention and response. And now I get to do incident prevention and response as well as business continuity planning. And basically I get to spend all day, every day looking at how to make things better. So it's super exciting. This is what most people think of when they see, when they think of like who's involved in an incident. But in reality, it's a little bit more like this. You have the person who makes the first report, then eventually maybe you have an incident commander, then you have different people responding and solving things and taking care of things, and then there's all the people watching it happen, especially now that the majority of incidents are usually solved through some kind of, because of remote teams, they tend to be solved through Slack or IRC or something else like that. So, let's talk about the incident reporter. What's their job to do? Well, the first thing that the incident reporter has, by the way, I learned this trick from Amy, is put lots of cute cats in your slides. So what do? The incident reporter's job is, first of all, they're the one who notices there's a problem. Then they have to make a choice. Are they going to fix this themselves, or are they going to reach out and ask for an incident commander or somebody else on call? And then finally, if they do fix it themselves, they have to decide how to report it. Are they going to file a JIRA ticket? Are they going to just drop a note into Slack? But they do have to tell people that it happened, right? So there's even some communication around the first incident reporter, right? So how do you decide to call an incident commander? The guidelines that we give people at Fastly are when there's an outage of significant impact suspected, because it's likely that you're going to have to get a lot of people into the room at that point. You're probably going to have to be communicating to customers, or if cross-team facilitation is needed to resolve an issue in production. We keep this really, really simple, and we encourage people to page early and page often, rather than to sit there and dither and try to decide. We're like, you know what, just reach out. As Amy said, it's a similar situation where if they, if you paged us by mistake, no big, we can always go back to bed. The majority of our incidents honestly happen during the US workday, so it's not a big deal. We just get, distracted for a minute and then we go back to work. When we give people some guidelines about when they page an incident commander, let them know. Let everybody else know. We're very, very big on communication. You've got to communicate during an incident. I just realized I forgot to start the timer. I put it up here because I'm smart. There we go. And let them know if you're moving to a different channel. We have dedicated channels for incident command, and we are getting a bot any day now that actually splits out channels and spins up a JIRA ticket and works a lot like what Amy described. When you go to that channel, while you're waiting for the incident commander or whoever you page to show up, explain the problem, including take a wild ass guess at the severity and at what the customer impact is. And then explain why you paged the incident commander. This way, when they get into the room, they already have an idea of what is going on. Speaking of, I'm going to sidebar here for a second. The next two groups of people that I'm going to talk about are incident commanders and incident responders. And those are both generally people who are on call, who are paged. So some good practices to follow when you're on call is have your information current and in two places. I'm really big into redundancy because, so we have pager duty, right? But pager duty goes down sometimes, it's true. And so we also have everybody keep their phone contact information in Slack. That way we have two different places to look at it. When we're looking at really, really big events, we'll actually build a response document, and that has all of the key players and actually what the on-call schedule is as well. Be near a computer when you're on call. Yeah, it's kind of a drag to take your computer out to nightclubs and everywhere else with you, but we've all done it, and we ask people in general to be within 10 minutes of a computer. So like I can go down to my corner store and come back because I can make that walk pretty quickly. Make sure that your phone is charged, that you've overridden do not disturb. There are ways, at least with PagerDuty, you can download the vCard and then you can set those as favorites, or you can set override as well. Take care of yourself. You're on call. You might get woken up in the middle of the night. So take advantage of being able to, like, if you get a full night to sleep, like, sleep that night, you know, and eat a healthy dinner. And if you're having a problem, like, you know, something comes up in your life that means that you can't fulfill your on-call duties, reach out to your secondary or to somebody else on your team and say, hey, I can't do this today. I need somebody to take time for me today, to take on-call for me today. Narrate your actions. Talk and talk and type and type and type every time you're going to do something, every time you're going to take a step. Use your team's communication channels for that, whether you're on a phone bridge or whether you're typing. Make sure you tell people what you're going to do before you do it. And make sure that you're asking for what you need from your team members. Maybe you need somebody to pair with. Maybe you need help from another team. Maybe you need more information about the situation. Maybe you need to take a break. Maybe you got to pick your kids up. Whatever you got to do, let people know. And don't forget that we're all human and we all expect these things to happen. So what does the incident commander do? Well, at Fastly, we have them figure out what's going on. We have them focus on time boxing, because people, engineers, in particular developers who are trying to solve a problem, will sometimes get so caught up in finding the most perfect solution, or in like really really getting all the diagnostics and dumping all the logs. And you're like, yeah, but in the meantime, our customers are suffering. So we train our incident commanders to do a lot of time boxing and to pay attention and use things like Slack's remind feature to oh, I got to do this in 10 minutes. Oh, I got to do this in 10 minutes. You know, oh, time is passing. An incident commander may be the person who communicates with the executives, all of our other teams, right? That might be what they might do that, or if it's a really big incident, they might farm that out to somebody else, right? An incident commander's job in general is to delegate and to make sure that they're always moving things forward toward a solution. And then finally, we make sure that at the end, everything, you know, we've wrapped everything up, we've recorded everything we can get, and we know who the right people are to talk to help make sure that this doesn't happen again, and to really like step back and analyze the incident and look at what happened afterward, after we're calmed down, but that we have all that information when we're looking at it. So how do we do that at Fastly? We have 2 people on call at a time, a primary and a secondary, for the incident commanders. They're 4-day shifts. And as you can see, they have the same jobs that I was talking about earlier. But what's really kind of cool here that we do is we put managers on call. It's all our incident command team is not individual contributors, except for some very senior engineers. It's mostly people who manage for their day-to-day life, because that's what you want. That's the skill you want, is someone to manage other people and talk to the other people. And you don't necessarily need somebody who is technical enough to understand what is going on and to ask the right questions. But the main skill that you need in an incident commander is to manage. So they're coordinating the response, they're getting the right people, they're again time boxing things, they're communicating out statuses to everybody, and again, they're gonna assist with the post-incident analysis, which Sue will be talking about after me. So I'm not going to try to play this video but just look Siren Cat up. It's adorable. Incident responders they are not the incident commander. In general, it is not a good idea to try to be solving the problem at the same time that you are trying to run the incident. We coach our incident commanders. If you get paged and you are actually the subject matter expert, escalate to your secondary or find somebody else to come and do the job so that you can focus on solving the problem and you don't have to think about coordinating and who do I talk to and what do I do and who needs to check all the boxes. Again, you narrate your activity to the incident commander, and we tell people not to take moves in production during an incident unless the incident commander has said, yes, do that. So you say, yeah, I'm going to do this. Okay, yes, do that. All right. You know, and that way you're not stepping on toes. You're not changing 5 different things. We try to tell people to give, to explain how long something that they're going to do will take. because that way the incident commander can appropriately evaluate risk and figure out what's going on. And then you note follow-up items for later. You just keep a running note, and then that goes into the JIRA or the incident analysis, and we talk about that in the meeting. So some examples of incident responders are SME, stands for subject matter expert. In engineering, they're focused on finding the technical solutions. We bring in our customer support people or our technical account managers. They act as a conduit between customers and engineers. And then we have people running internal, we can actually shell out and have somebody running internal communications as well. And we've provided a template for them to use. And this is actually internal communications duty. We call it report card duty internally. That's the role that we use to train future incident commanders. So they go on to, people who are in training go on to that so that they can see and gather information during actual real incidents. But providing the internal status reports is not a mission critical item. So it lets people do it without necessarily that pressure of, oh God, I've got to direct traffic and oh, this is terrifying, right? It lets people like get used to handling things. Bystanders, we have 2 requests of bystanders. Look for ways to help, and please don't start talking in our channels about, telling dog jokes or, posting cat gifs or whatever. Like, keep that out of the incident command room. Occasionally, I've been asked for cat gifs because that's what one of the responders needs, and we're sort of in a break. But by and large, try not to do cat gifs, although my cats are adorable. But so that's my talk. We are hiring in site reliability engineering at Fastly, and I would love to have any of you come work with me. You can find me on Twitter. I'm CLynXX. You can find me on Hangout Slack. I like to hang out in Pound Incident Response, unsurprisingly, with all the other incident response nerds talking about incidents. And you can also find me in HugOps on Hangout Slack. Any questions?
Do your engineers, as first responders, do some of them do that kind of dual role of SME and incident commander? And how do you get people to sign up to be incident commanders?
Mm-hmm. So that's 2 questions, I think. It's okay. The first question is, do we get people doing that dual role? And if it's a minor incident, sometimes people will kind of they'll command the incident, and they'll also be suggesting solutions or maybe looking at solutions themselves. But we try to discourage people from doing that too terribly often because I find that an incident is resolved faster if they're paying attention. Or if people only have to pay attention to one thing and don't have to switch focus a lot. The other question was, how do we get people to sign up for incident command? And God only knows how this happened, but people actually see it as sort of a prestige role. And they're very excited about it. I think this is because our incident response process is pretty good. And also because people are excited. Everybody wants to be the hero, and being an incident commander kind of makes you look like a hero. We have incident commander training 3 times a quarter, once in a time zone that's useful for everybody all over the world. I'm the only person who has to stay up late and teach it, me or my analysts. We just let people sign up as they will, and they have to get their manager's permission to do it, because it does take away sometimes, like if you get called to an incident, it will affect your deliverables. But by and large, people just seem really excited about it. So.
So do you have 2 parallel on-call rotations, one for incident commander and one for incident responder?
No. So we have about 15 different critical services at Fastly, actually 16 if you count the cache fleet. So we have about 15 critical services, 15, 16, and each one of those has its own rotation. And then we also have a rotation for incident commanders. And it's up to there are a few automated pages that go to each team that's responsible for critical services, and that's why they'll sometimes just solve things themselves. But also, it's not uncommon for incident commanders to manually trigger a page.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I ask a clarifying question? Do you have a centralized incident commander rotation and then like the 15, 16 incident response rotations, or do you have like
Yes.
basically come in pairs?
So we have most of our incident response teams just have a single. It'll rotate through the 5 or 7 people on the team on whatever that team has decided is an appropriate rotation for them. We try to let teams self-manage that. We don't tell people, oh, you got to be on call for 24 hours on and 24 off or whatever. We try to give people good guidelines about, how to take care of themselves and that sort of thing. But for incident command specifically, we do have a primary and a secondary, and they work in 4-day shifts. And I think we're actually up to 9 people now on the team.
So I've also seen that incident commander can be a little bit of like a hero role. Do you have a time limit on how long people can be in that role before they have to hand off?
Yes. My goal, so I've been with Fastly for just a little bit longer than a year now, and my goal is to make those 6-month rotations and then have people rotating back into their teams. Right now, the rotation is a little bit longer than that because we're trying to ramp up the program. But ultimately, I would have people rotating into that role for 6 months and then out of that role and not being on call. Because it can be kind of brutal, and it can't, it's not really, honestly, but it can, even just the toll of being on call, even if you don't have to answer pages, can get to people sometimes. And so we really try to be kind and look at how people, my main motivating factor is to always remember that incidents are made of people. Sounds like a Soylent Green reference, but and that humans, that humans are going to human, and that we first and foremost need to take care of ourselves.
So I'm curious how much in your role and with your team you develop the subject matter expert part for engineers, specifically around learning tooling and learning how to debug different situations. Is that isolated to their team, or do you have a role in that too?
For individual technologies, we leave that up to the teams themselves, and we don't what we expect. What we expect incident commanders to be subject matter experts in is management. We have a lot of lists and checklists as to which teams and who to page when and that kind of thing. And we also are constantly working on making tooling to make that a lot easier so that people don't have to just go pull up another Confluence page or a Google Doc or whatever.
I think that's it.
Cool. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
And now this is Sue.
And I'm so glad that you made that reference because incident management is made of people. Thanks for having us, Leanplum. This has been an awesome experience for me. Just a couple of words about myself. My name is Sue Oswald-Pomeroy. I work at SendGrid in our internal audit group. I am a professional poet turned compliance analyst by way of Antarctica. Like I said, I work for SendGrid. We are an email service provider powering the engagement strategy for the world's leading digital brands. So when you took your Uber here, we delivered you that email receipt. So we serve a whole bunch of folks, and by the way, we are hiring. We have offices here in Redwood City, as well as Irvine and Denver, where I'm from. I want to tell you a story that David Foster Wallace told in a commencement speech. It goes like this. There were 2 fish swimming along, and they passed another older fish who said, "Hey, how's water?" And the 2 fish said, "What the hell is water?" And his point was that, that some of the most important realities that we know are the most difficult to talk about. Can we get speaker notes? Can I just do speaker notes here? Can we pull up the speaker notes real quick? Thank you. Sorry. Seriously. Oh, no, it's okay. We can do it. Can we do it this way?
Sure.
This one?
Usually presenter view with audience Q&A.
Yes.
Oh, hold on. It's right there. Oh, yeah. Hover down.
Technical.
Notes.
Thank you.
And that's all.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you. So again, Foster Wallace. His point was some of the most obvious and important realities are the hardest ones for us to see and talk about. And our systems are the same way. It's where we find the most enlightening visions of how our systems work by getting people to talk about what their stories are. I want to tell you a little story because we are all storytellers. Here's a story about how my daughter sliced her hand one day when she was opening an avocado while I was out walking the dog. At the most simplistic level, she cut her hand, she got a Band-Aid. At a deeper level, though, she and my son made some serious decisions and trade-offs while they were under a lot of pressure. And it went like this. She asked her brother to get a Band-Aid. He said, we should call Mom. She said, no, I think I need a Band-Aid first. He said, okay, great, wash your hand first, though. She agreed. She went and washed her hand. Then they argued a little bit about whether or not they should go and find me or whether or not they should call me. They decided to go and find me, which I'm not really sure why they did that. And when I got home, my mom brain kicked in, and I was like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And then, why were you using sharp knives when I wasn't home? And then my work brain kicked in, and I said, when I saw her start to freak out, like she was never going to touch a knife or never going to tell me that she touched a knife again, and I said, let's do a post-incident analysis. And they said, isn't that what Uncle John does at work? And I said, yes, that's what I do at work too. And so what I did was bring them back into the tunnel of their incident so that they could tell me how they made the decisions that they made. What were the things that they saw? What were the experiences that they had in their past that told them to do the things that they wanted to do? So during an incident, people make these kinds of trade-offs all the time. Sidney Decker, in The Field Guide to Understanding Human Error, calls this being inside the tunnel, right? It means you don't know the future. You can't predict which way is going to be the way that's going to lead you out of this outage. So there are trade-offs like goal conflicts. Let me trace this issue just a little longer. Is what I'm seeing even really an issue? Then I'll call someone else in. Or let me see if the situation will resolve itself and maybe we don't have to wake up everybody. So people also make sacrifice judgments, right? Let's just shut the system off before we corrupt any more data. DBAs, this is probably where you want to live. And so as part of our complex systems, right, those folks' understanding of the system is what keeps those systems operating most days under regular circumstances. This is usually the way we see timelines after an incident. Something happened that made something else happen. It's very simplified and compared to how the event actually happened. For folks who've been inside those incidents, they never happen this way. So when we get outside of the tunnel and we say stuff like, oh, it should have been obvious, I should have gone that way, right? This is how we see them in the past, and this is what we call hindsight bias. In reality, this is what our incidents look like, and this is where we're making these trade-offs, and we're going down a path, and then we're changing our directions. We need to make the effort to avoid seeing an incident narrowly, right? We don't want to see this single understandable story that we're making all the time. And we want to know how people who were there experienced it, right? Knowing that now, after the fact, we know more than they did at the time. So during post-incident review, we don't want to simply ask what happened, because when we do that, we close down the possibility to talk about how people saw the system behave. I'm usually a facilitator. I'm not an engineer and I'm not on call. I usually facilitate our post-incident reviews. So it's my job to ask the type of questions to get our engineers and our developers to tell us their stories. None of this can be possible, by the way, without having a safe space. That means we have to make sure that folks aren't going to be blamed. And I know y'all have heard about having those blameless rooms, but I cannot emphasize to you enough, when new folks come into your company and they don't know that, it can be a pretty challenging room to be in. Ultimately, our goal is to develop a better understanding of the incident, right? And that happens by understanding how this system is expected to work on any normal day, right? We have to jump from an understanding of the event, and we can't jump into those fixes, right? Quick fixes, like, let's have a postmortem so we can fix what went wrong. If we do that, we're gonna have this really shallow, maybe something that is helpful a little bit, or we could actually just end up making stuff worse. Todd Conklin said it perfectly when he said the problem comes when the pressure to fix outweighs the pressure to learn. Thank you, John, for this slide. The value of the stuff that comes after an incident really comes out of the conversations and preparation that you put into the debriefing as a facilitator. I can't stress this enough. Looking at chat histories, rewatching the video of your video teleconference if you record your war rooms, talking to people who worked that incident, including your customer success folks. Looking for what are those inflection points? Where did they make a decision that sent them down a particular path? It's either going to be a great decision, it's not, and that's normative, right? Like who knows what great even means? But you want to ask them, what are the things that led you to make that decision? Knowing what goes on in the minds of the folks who work the issue, and everybody who walks into that room, everyone has their own mystery to solve, right? So if folks are only interested in getting the solutions to their own mysteries, they'll think that any dialogue around their own thing, anything else is just a waste of time. If you're a facilitator, you have to find out where this overlap in understanding is and set the conditions so they can come right to everyone in the room. So you might have a network engineer who says, hey, like, this was pretty straightforward. How come they didn't call me sooner? And you might have your DBA say, hey, I understand how the database got wedged. I just don't want to waste time going over that part. I really want to understand what happened with the load balancer. And then you're going to have the CEO who's like, I got to tell the board members what the heck happened. Please don't waste my time on details that don't matter. What's our customer impact? And then you have your customer service agents who just want to talk at the post-incident review. Listen to them. They want to understand why we couldn't get more customer updates more frequently to get the message out. And your application engineer, they want to say, hey, you know what? This could have been so much worse, right? But I want to understand. But I don't know. What are they? Like, how does this database thing even work? In case you needed a reminder. Post-incident reviews are not for finding a root cause, because we don't spend time looking for a root cause of your 4 nines of uptime. When we talk about root cause, we have ideas of what we think already happened. And when we look for that root cause, that's what we're going to find. What you look for is what you find. So look to your humans, people. There's a lot of times when people want to end the conversation with, oh, it's my fault. Deploy bad code. Sorry. No need for a postmortem. We know exactly what happened. Sorry. And that's really the beginning of the conversation. That's absolutely not the end. Or we'll end up with, hey, human error, man. Like that's it. Just, I guess we have to send Joe to training again. Stephen Chirac. I love how Stephen Chirac, in his talk about life beyond human error, said the definition of human error is someone did something that they were not supposed to do according to someone else. And I thought that was pretty poignant, and I encourage you to watch that talk. So we need the stories from the folks who were in that tunnel to tell us what went into keeping it from getting it worse, right? Hint, it's people who did things that they normally do every day of their jobs. Get folks to go back before that error happened. And just a note, errors are not causal. An error cannot make a thing happen. An error is a thing that tells us it's an outcome of something that already happened. As facilitators, we really need to help those folks talk about what their second stories are, right? Those stories from within the tunnel. So here are some questions that can help you get to second stories. What did you see? What were you expecting to see? What were the signals that you were getting that there was a problem? Is this normal behavior? Does anybody else know that this is fairly common behavior? Excellent blog post that has a whole list of different types of questions that can help you as a facilitator. In fact, we've put these in our post-incident review template so that they're smack dab in front of the faces of our facilitators so that they can use them and have them at the ready, because sometimes you can be thrown off guard during a post-incident review. So a few takeaways. One, make sure it's imperative to have a safe place to say what you saw and how you saw it, right? And then also understanding that failure and success, they both come from the same place, people doing ordinary work. And everything that we do, everything we know from managing an outage comes from our post-incident review process, right? We learn more about how to do this better every single time we do it. Sometimes we don't have action items, and that's okay. Sometimes you try something to improve. And then a little bit of reading and viewing material. If you want to see a few things, buy Sidney Decker's book, The Field Guide to Understanding Human Error. It's an imperative for me. And I also highly recommend John's talk from DevOps Enterprise Summit from this past fall. Really talks about what those mental models and how people have these different views is really informative. And I'll leave you just with this quote from Dave Woods. If it, there we go. If you're looking, or if you haven't found people responsible for outcomes, you haven't really found your system. So, thanks. Any questions, if we've got time?
Are there any kinds of questions that you like to ask in post-incident analysis when maybe a conversation is stalled?
How? I honestly I default when folks are, they'll say, well, I restarted our filter servers. Well, how did you know to do that? Well, we just do it. Okay, well, but what are the things that told you that that was the right thing to do? And it's more than just, it's my job. That's usually what I'll get, is it's my job to know. Because I work on these servers all the time. And so I need to dig in a little bit, and I say, well, did you, where did you get that knowledge? Like, what was the indicator? Were there errors that you saw? Were there logs from, that you saw in Splunk that said we needed to do that? Like, what is the thing that led you to that decision? And usually some of the answers are, we don't troubleshoot on our customer's dime. So get that up and running so that our customers can send mail quickly, and then we'll deal with the other things that are going wrong later.
Other questions?
So I'm curious if you have questions that you ask when a post-incident analysis is getting into questions about like, oh, well, we have limited resources, which is why we haven't been able to work on that, or getting into sort of existential angst about limits on funding or staff.
Sure. I usually don't have those questions come up. I saw some really surprising looks. We really try to keep our post-incident reviews in the tunnel. Usually those kinds of things will come after somebody's suggested a fix. And I'm okay. Well, can we back up a second? So let's, we spend less than 5 minutes of a post-incident review talking about action items, because the point is, what did we learn because of this incident, or through this incident, or in this incident? So we'll, I guess we used to have those, like a long time ago, I think we probably had those questions. And it was, well, let's talk about it we'll have some soak time after that post-incident review. We'll share our notes from the post-incident review with like our notification lists. So we have different severities of outages like everybody, and there are emails that go to them, and it can be everyone from our senior leadership team on really bad incidents to our middle management team. And so, sending out those notes on, hey, this is a problem we've seen 3 times before. So that was something significant that came out of a particular post-incident review. And then those managers and those directors are going, well, maybe we should see what we can do about that.
Other than those emails you just mentioned, are there other ways you make sure that the people who should be reading the notes from those postmortems that weren't in the room actually get to see them?
If you can solve that problem, please let me know. It is really difficult because, at least for us, we're not at the place where people come to incident reviews for fun, except for me, and I don't have any funding authority. So what I do just to try to evangelize is to mention them in the kitchen while I'm getting my tea, or we did at one point also share notes during our engineering all hands on any postmortems that happened within the last time frame between engineering all hands. And so that way all of the senior managers, all of the directors, the VP of ops and engineering, they're in that space, and so they're able to recognize that was some learning that came out of that post-incident review.
Hi.
Hi.
In what ways do you think having been a poet positions you uniquely for this work?
Stories. It's all about the stories. It really is about finding, so when I was in graduate school and I was learning about poetry, one of the most important things that I learned is that white space is as important as the words that you put on the page. And so finding those things that it's easy to talk about things that went wrong, right? We hardly ever talk about how things go right. And so asking the question, what went right during this outage, right? Because typically people are kind of bummed that we had an outage. So asking them what went right, it makes people smile in the room a little bit, because they can say, oh yeah, well, so-and-so was a rock star because she was able to pull up the database backups really quickly, or hey, that tool that so-and-so developed after the last time we had that outage, yeah, we were able to use that and cut that recovery time in half. So kind of looking at that white space instead of where the words go or where the pain lives. Not that all poems are about pain, just saying. Awesome, thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Is it weird that I'm now weirdly excited about incidents? It's like, yeah, I want to try all the things. Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you Leanplum for hosting us, and thank you our speakers, obviously. Can't happen without you. We still have, I think, until 9 to kind of socialize, chill, think there might be pizza left, and then there's obviously drinks left. So yeah. Thank you.